The things that are of greatest interest to me have to do with my realization that the 5'10", 165-pound description, which is entered into the official documentation as associated with Lee Oswald.
There's never been any reflection about connecting the fact of the 5'10", 165 report on the radio. He weighed 30 or 40 pounds less than that at the time of his death. So not only is the description inaccurate, description demands clothing. It makes no sense whatsoever to be describing minutiae like 5'10" and 165. One of the things that has impelled me in this case for the last 20 years is the wallet that was found on the ground at the Tippit shooting. And I've spent a lot of time looking at it, as well as the National Archives photos of the wallet that is currently in the National Archives. The wallet is important for a couple of reasons. One was because the wallet at the scene supposedly contained Oswald's ID, and that's what led people to believe that Oswald was the shooter, of course, and why they felt like they had the right guy when they got to the Texas Theater. In fact, there's a report saying they knew his name before they looked at his wallet at the theater. One of the crazy things about this story is apparently there's two versions that have been going back and forth. One version is that the wallets are the same, the other is wallets, and there's really only one wallet. And the other version is that there's two wallets. And after looking at this exhaustively, I am of the opinion that there are two wallets, and that the throwdown wallet found at the scene was, in fact, almost identical. It was the same manufacturer, same wallet maker. Just a couple of tiny details were different about the wallet, but those details can be seen. And what it illustrates to me is how carefully this planted evidence was set up, orchestrated. The finding of Oswald's wallet at the crime scene was suppressed for 33 years. Here's the other thing that really amazes me in this situation. The card that uses Hidel's name and Oswald's photo is not reported on as being found by any of the arresting officers in their reports. The obvious conclusion is that Westbrook, the guy who found the wallet at the Tippit scene, was in on the assassination. There is no way, Alan, that I can reverse field on this.
Yeah, I hear you. I understand.
It's just too daunting. And the arresting officer, Paul Bentley, I believe was in on it as well. But I want to focus on Westbrook for the moment, because Westbrook was like the Ann Egerter, in a sense, of the Dallas police. He had access to all the personnel files in the shop over at Dallas. He knew what he could do and what he couldn't do. And he filled his colleague, Jerry Hill, with all kinds of information in the moments after Oswald came in about Oswald's entire history as a defector in the Soviet Union, which Hill then went out and dutifully poured out in incredible detail to the press corps assembled from around the country before the afternoon was over on November 22nd. And then Westbrook went off to work in Vietnam in the Public Safety Division, where he was dealing with CIA and intelligence issues on an hourly basis. The guy was a spook. And he was at every crime scene. He was at the Tippit scene.
Yeah, I know.
He's at the theater. But all I'm saying is he's controlling the action. I think the one thing that didn't happen that should have happened, as far as Westbrook was concerned, was for Oswald to get killed in the theater, and it didn't happen. And that's where things had fell apart. That's where Jack Ruby had to step in.
And this man, Westbrook, being on the scene, can you tell me a little more about where you are at the moment on Westbrook in particular?
Well, I think to sum up my thinking on Westbrook is I think he was one of the main actors on the ground. He, as we mentioned before, was at both the Tippit shooting and the theater. He had no business being there. He wasn't in uniform. He had no history with working on a on-the-ground investigation whatsoever. He was a desk jockey doing personnel. Why is he leading the troops? And I mean leading the troops for that critical hour after the most important criminal event that happened in the history of Dallas. It doesn't make a lick of sense.
And I don't want to interrupt you, but this relates to this thing we were talking about, Murray Jackson being the dispatcher, who theoretically is just being told what to. Somebody's putting a piece of paper in front of him, and he's pressing a button and stating whatever or reading whatever he's handed. Who would have been in a position to get Murray Jackson, Officer Tippit, and an officer named R.C. Nelson to Oak Cliff in the immediate aftermath of the assassination? And so it would only be conjecture on my part to think that someone like Westbrook would have the executive authority to be able to make that order for reasons which are not clear to me.
Murray Jackson's not talking. Murray Jackson said I was Tippett's friend. So Murray Jackson, as far as I'm concerned, is a liar. I think Murray Jackson, working with Tippett, they were close friends. And I don't think Murray Jackson did this to put Tippett in harm's way. I think he was horrified by what happened. But I think he was not horrified to see the assassination of JFK. I think he was in on the plot.
So really, we're simply conceding we have no idea why Murray Jackson dispatched these two officers to Oak Cliff.
I'll tell you, my thinking is that Jackson was told to send him there. And I think Tippett was doomed to die. Period. I mean, when you read McBride's book, one of the things you find out from Tippett's father is that the Tippett shooting had something to do with Oswald. And he was looking for Oswald in Oak Cliff when he died. And nobody's ever said that. This is kind of like the wallet, this is these little pieces of evidence that have been concealed from us. And it's my affirmation, if you will, that the Dallas situation has been covered up methodically for 50 years, and that if you look at the history of the witnesses that have died in the immediate aftermath of 1963, the Tippett witnesses took an even heavier hit than the Kennedy witnesses did. It's an appalling admission of the lack of an effective media corps in Dallas and the lack of an effective investigative corps in Dallas. But I think a lot of it, in terms of the Dallas end of it, the Tippett end of it, is just pure, unadulterated fear. Nobody has talked about Westbrook's role in this case, with the exception of a few dogged researchers over the years. He's gotten a pass, and it's a tragedy. It's not a tragedy that can't be fixed by history, and I think it is going to be fixed by history, because the elements are just too plain.